Hi there. Welcome back to Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. Today we are shifting back to a similar conversation we had a few weeks back when we spoke with our director, Ira Wagner, about the role of the museum within the community and how the arts can be not only a place of reflection, but a point of action and inspiration. In that episode, I mentioned wanting to talk more in depth with our chief curator, Gail Stavitsky, about this exact topic, and that is just what we did. When I think of art, especially in this moment, there is an evolving and shifting ocean of possibility and meaning that can rise to the surface depending on what is on the mind. For me, very recently, the notion of democratizing art has been at the forefront of my arts consumption. I mean, like I've always said, the demystification and democratization of museums and art has always largely been the definable goal of this show. To me, and what I had hoped Gail and I would get to the root of, is why art and art movements are and always have been, in many instances, political and culturally relevant, and the way that people can draw inspiration, direction, and purpose from art rooted in adversity. So, without any more pause, the Montclair Art Museum's chief curator, Gail Stavitsky, is here to answer the question, what can we learn from art? Hi, Gail.
Hi, Alex.
How's it going?
Good.
Yeah.
Just very busy.
Yeah. How are you? How are you doing, though?
Well, I think hanging in there, but probably I watch the news too much.
Yeah.
So I'm always on top of every crazy development, but I work in an art museum, so that has a very positive role in my mental well-being.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I talked to Ira of, in a similar vein of conversation about, what it is we do here, there was a clear consensus that both of us kind of talked about where, when the work that you're doing feels positive and it feels impactful and important, it's easier to kind of, I guess see the field a little clearer and at least feel like there's a path forward and something to reach for and feel like you're doing good work. So
right.
I know that's probably obviously the same for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's having a sense of purpose that what you're doing contributes in a positive way to the world. I mean, even if it isn't,
as ideal
curing
as we'd want,
diseases and dealing with poverty, it still, I think, art has a really important role to play in society and people's enjoyment of life.
It does. It absolutely does. And I guess for an audience who may not be familiar with you, could you just introduce yourself and tell everyone what it is you do here at MAM?
Sure. So I am chief curator at the MAM, Montclair Art Museum, and I've been doing it for a long time, as I always say, 30 years. So it's been very rewarding because it really is a range of activities. And my main responsibilities are taking care of a collection of American and Native American art of almost around 12,000 works of art. And of course, I'm saying this very collectively because I work with a whole team. But I'm also responsible for the exhibition schedule, which is very active.
Always mounting.
Always mounting with, an average of 6 to even 8 shows a year sometimes. So,
for this episode, there was a range of things that we wanted to kind of discuss, but I think in light of, similar to our episode with Ira, what's going on in the world and barrage of what's going on in the news, I think it was important to sit down and course of an episode or two, talk about, the institution's role and what we do, here in the community, and, what that means to those that we celebrate and support and aim to provide a sense of comfort and community towards. And then also the reason that I'm talking with you today is, obviously we're an art museum, and I think in this moment creativity is really important, and I think the arts are really important, and I think growing with, learning from, and experiencing art is something that we all could use in this moment and for the time to come. And there's a concept that I've been kind of talking about for a few episodes now. It's this idea of democratizing art, and to me, it's that art is for everyone, museums are for everyone. It's kind of the nucleus of this show in a lot of ways. And I just wanted to kind of start by asking you, like, what does the democratization of art mean to you?
So I do feel like the current show we have up, Exploring Our Connections, the New Jersey Arts Annual of 2024, is probably a great example of democratizing art, because it's a juried show where really everyone who lives or works in New Jersey who's an adult, more than 18 years old, was welcome to apply. But I guess I think the democratization comes from how the art is presented and making it accessible to a wide range of audiences. So, I mean, that's really everything from the programming surrounding shows, but I would say it's especially about the way information is presented in a show, and that can be everything from doing a video and social media. I mean, that's a great way of making everything more accessible to how labels are.
Absolutely. I was going to, you spoke to the labels. I think with that show, one of the really unique things, and something that I haven't seen before, whether it's in our shows or other institutions, is the approach to having the labels written in the first person, from the artist's perspective. And I think that does really open the door to really understanding where an artist is coming from in a lot of ways. It's really a unique thing, actually, that I think is quite cool about the NJ Arts Annual this time around.
Some of their statements were 3 pages long.
Yeah,
and, you don't want a label that's that long, so it does get edited, but it does of course intentionally reflect their voices.
Yeah. I think in a very similar vein, something else that comes to mind when thinking about all of this is this sensation and question about, like, why is it that art in many instances are tools and vessels for larger cultural movements? I think that for me, when I look around, I see a lot of humanity reflected in what's on the walls. And I guess I just wanted to talk to you about that, because I know you have, over the years, put on a lot of shows that are very poignant and impactful in that way. And I just, what does that mean to you?
Oh, thank you. Well, I do see artists as seers, visionaries, people who have a kind of special understanding and appreciation of the world around them, and they communicate that in such different ways. And I feel actually like the Exploring Our Connections and then the show that we have coming up of Nanette Carter's work really speaks to that, because I think one of the things that intrigues me is how certain artists like Nanette Carter address questions of political and social instability and anxiety in terms of abstract form. I mean, the whole show coming up is called Nanette Carter, A Question of Balance. The current show that's in Laurie Art's Stairway is Shifting Perspectives, so that through the destabilization of abstract forms and contrasting colors, like how she's communicating all that through an abstract vocabulary of forms, whereas a lot of the artists in Exploring Our Connections use figurative subject matter, even photographs of people to communicate social issues and to talk about different communities in New
Yeah.
Jersey. So there's such a wide range of expression, but all of these artists are engaged in their own ways with what they're seeing and feeling about current events.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on something, the notion that, in a large way, art historically has always been political. Obviously that varies and depends on what we're talking about. But I wanted to ask you, as we approach the next few years, I think history matters. And I think, looking in reflection is important. And I guess I wanted to maybe ask you, because I don't have an art history background, but I always like to ask people like you or Melissa, who graduated with an art history degree, who is on the show a lot, for some of this context sometimes. And I guess, what are some historically relevant art movements that now in this fraught moment can look to for inspiration, motivation, almost maybe a roadmap?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question because I think there's so many different ways to look at it. One thought I was thinking about somebody like George Inness, although he's not necessarily a part of a particular art movement, although some people associate him with tonalism, but he's kind of, he was very much his own person in the late 19th century. But in terms of some of his ideas, what he was engaged with, the way that he found the presence of the divine and the spirit in nature, the reverence for nature that he felt, and is very important. And I'm seeing how relevant that is for artists today, especially when I think about the two interviews that you conducted recently, Alex, with the two artists, Peter Jemison, Nathan Young, both indigenous artists, Native American artists, who could sense that feeling of a respect for nature. And I mean, at a time of climate change and worrying about, are we even going to have an environment that we can all survive in and thrive in, within the next 30 to 50 years. I feel like an artist, a progressive artist of the past, like George Inness, who was also an abolitionist, someone who, firmly believed in equality and social justice, how someone like that can still speak to us today.
Absolutely.
But there's so many other movements that I was thinking about. Land art, for example, from the 1970s, but still relevant today, how artists are, physically, literally creating works of art in the land, like Robert Smithson's Spiral Jetty, for example, how those can still resonate and speak to us. But then there are also artists of the Dada anti-art movement that rose up in protest to World War I and exploring ideas of of both the irrational but also the everyday, like the idea that Marcel Duchamp could take a bicycle wheel and turn it upside down and put it on a stool.
We often talk about Marcel Duchamp.
I guess I always mention him, but it's so important because Andy Warhol and everybody comes from Marcel Duchamp. So that kind of and in a way that is kind of a political or progressive statement of saying art doesn't just have to be pretty realistic paintings. It democratizes it. Exactly.
It seems simple to ask, but what about now? Like, in the same exact, framework, who's creating art perhaps that we're showing or that you've really started to see that symbolizes this progress and voices community concerns in a tangible and profound way that you just kind of spoke to about George Inness? in the sense of this show. I obviously I think of Nanette Carter, who's to be on View. I think about somebody like Karen King Choi, who's on View and Family, Community, and Belonging. There's dozens and dozens of others too, but I am curious about what you who comes to mind for you.
Well, probably because I'm working on a Tom Nussbaum retrospective, which will be his first museum retrospective, which is astounding considering how prolific he is. Also, he's 71 years old, so it's way, it's overdue, but I'm excited about his art because he's still going strong. He's making incredible work. And also, he's an artist who has created over 40 public art commissions. So he is all about engaging the community. He's been so active with a couple of mural projects in East Orange, New Jersey, for example. Or I would point to Train Time, which is the project at the Bay Street train station here in Montclair.
Yes.
The playground at Edgemont Park. I mean, he's been just so engaged with community and
mutual
making
aid,
art available and democratizing art. I mean, he is really a key proponent of that.
Yeah.
Not that that's all of his art,
no,
because
of course,
he also's so prolific with creating individual sculptures and drawings and paper cuts, and he works in such a variety of mediums, but that really addresses this subject of art available for all.
Kind of pivoting slightly, but all of this obviously is in the same realm of conversation, but in your history of collecting and curating, like we kind of talked about earlier, you really pushed and embraced bold and thoughtful creatives. Like we kind of keep going back to her, but Nanette Carter obviously comes to mind in particular. How can we learn from what these artists have to say, especially now?
Well, I think that we can learn that artists have such a wide range of expression, of expressing themselves. So I really appreciate the individuality of these artists, who I think in that way maybe they encourage us to pursue our own individual forms of expression and individual ways of thinking too, thinking outside of the box, for example. I have always felt that's kind of one of the big lessons of all artists.
I just want to say, obviously, thank you so much for sitting down with us for this. This is, at least I certainly feel, and I think the institution certainly feels, is a really important thing to talk about. I think just beyond the community aspect of things, it's important to reassure and reaffirm that, our mission and our values and what we aim to provide both Montclair, North Jersey, the New York metro region, the East Coast, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to put a box around it, but what we aim to service, be that culture and community and, the sensation of experience and learning and growth, and the list can go on and on and on and on. I think it's super important, and maybe it feels like I'm beating a dead horse a little bit, but I think making that evident and clear that despite what is happening in the world, the Montclair Art Museum is not changing the way that we engage with the world. And I think that's really important and speaks to the art that we collect and we show. And so with that, what is coming to MAM soon in the next couple months, maybe even years at this point, but that's really exciting for people to look out for and be hopefully inspired by and learn from and reflect upon.
Yeah, well, in early February, we're opening 2 shows. Nanette Carter, A Question of Balance, which is curated by guest curator Mary Birmingham, with whom I've been working closely, and I'm so thrilled that she proposed the idea of the show to us.
I met her yesterday when I interviewed Nanette. She's great. She's very sweet.
Yeah, she's been they've both been great to work with. And then I'm working on a show about 25 years of collecting at MAM that's called A to Z Collecting at MAM 2000 to 2025. And the Z, which got to credit Ira, he came up with this.
Yes.
The Z is spelled SZE because it's a reference to the work of the artist Sarah Z, who's a really renowned contemporary artist known for her site-specific installations. And we recently acquired a work of hers, which will go on view for the first time.
It's very exciting
in this show. And there are actually 25 works for the 25 years. There's a work by another leading contemporary artist, Derek Adams. So we came up with the A with his name. But there are works that go back to the 19th century with the artist Edward Bannister, who was the first African-American artist to show a work and win a prize in a national exposition. It was the Philadelphia Centennial Exposition in 1876. So we're thrilled that we'll have his work on view. It was not on view in the Century show because his work is from the late 19th century, so it predated that century concept. So it's nice that we're going to show that again for the first time in I think 17 years or something.
Okay, that's exciting.
So, rare or never seen before, work seen before. A lot of recent acquisitions, so very exciting, and quite a range of styles and philosophies. And
last question. Again, thank you so much, Gail.
Oh, sure.
Obviously, this has been a bit of a stressful and angst-filled time. But what are you looking forward to? What are you excited about? I think that there is so much fear and uncertainty and in the air right now, and despite that, I can't help but still feel positive and energetic about certain things. And, in a lot of ways, I am just excited to be able to come to work every day and tell stories that I feel like really matter. And they keep me creatively invested and engaged and frankly, just happy. And I think that's something we all need to try and feel, especially as the news gets weirder and weirder with drones over New Jersey and all these other things, all these other headlines, but that seem to kind of show up every day. But what are you excited about?
Well, I always get excited about what's coming up next. Also, the fact that I work with a great team. I am excited about George Inness's birthday.
Ooh, yeah.
Coming up, his 200th birthday.
I have to tell you, Gail.
Yes.
I was going to save this because Melissa and I, we both went to D.C. this past weekend. We just happened to be going separately, but we ended up kind of crossing paths at the National Gallery. And so we were there for different reasons. We were there. She was there to see Impression Sunrise is here for a little while, and I've never been, so I wanted to go see the Leonardo da Vinci work. But I'd gone to the Portrait Gallery, which also doubles as the American Art Museum. It's kind of the same building. And I turned a corner and I went, "Is that? No way." And it was a George Inness work. And I was so stunned. I was like, "Oh, I thought we owned all these. There's more? There's more out there?" But then I came to learn that there's one at the Newport Art Museum. I don't think it's on view right now, but when I visited there a couple weeks ago when I went up to Rhode Island, and I was kind of perusing their website to be like, what's in their collection? And I saw they had a George Inness too. But it was very fun getting to see one in the flesh outside of MAM. And that made me excited. But yeah.
Well, we do have the best collection in the world, but not to brag too much. But the reason I'm mentioning and I'm excited about it is May 1st, 1825 is when he was born. So we came up with this idea of the month of May being a celebration of his birth, and that gave us the idea to do a rotation of one of the walls of the Innes Gallery, which will open to the public on Friday, May 16th. And then there's going to be a wonderful public program on May 31st, which is a Saturday, with several speakers, including Nathan Young, the
nice.
Native American artist whom you interviewed. And so I'm just excited to be able to have something new going on in the Innes Gallery, since it was the so-called new installation is always already from 2022. So that's yeah. So, and then after that is the fall of 2025 is the Tom Nussbaum show opening. So I'm very excited about that.
A lot on the horizon.
a lot
to
of
look
work
forward
to do. Yeah, a lot of work to
get
get there. Yeah.
Well, Gail, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Alex.
So that was Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me. Thank you so much to Gail Stavitsky for sitting down with me to chat this episode. I really do appreciate it deeply. The museum's open, Fridays and weekends, so that's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You can get tickets by checking us out in person or visiting us online. You can also follow us on Instagram. That's at Mam Montclair, M-A-M Montclair. You can follow us on YouTube, TikTok, all those places. Please leave a rate and review for the show wherever it is that you're streaming it. That really does help us get into the feed of people who would like the show, kind of like you, if you're listening to it. Share it with a friend, share it with a loved one, share it with your neighbor. We're just trying to spread the word and spread, the importance and power of what art can mean and be for somebody who may, need it. So that was Maybe Actually Museums Are For Me, a podcast from the Montclair Art Museum. Please, please join us next week where we have a similar conversation with somebody new. I don't know who that's going to be yet, but hopefully you find out next Wednesday, because that's when these episodes stream. All right, take care.